Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Daniel. I'm the president and CEO of the Cyber Threat Alliance, one of the sponsors of today's event, along with the coalition and George Mason. It's my pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker. Representative Langevin has been in Congress now for 16 years. And for almost all of that, he's been focused on cybersecurity as one of the key issues. In fact, he was focused on cybersecurity long before it was hip and cool to be focused on cybersecurity. And in a town where it's easy to be, a mile wide and an inch deep, Jim really stands out as someone who actually really knows what he's talking about in the cybersecurity area. He's been very passionate about this issue for a long time, so I'm very interested in what he has to say. And don't worry, even though he's from Rhode Island and there's that slight twang that you can hear in his voice, you will still be able to understand him. I mean, unless he starts talking about quahogs or something like that. So thank you very much.
Michael, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope this mic is turned on. You hear me okay? Very good. Well, first of all, let me say what a pleasure it is to be here with everyone. I have to say, I've done a lot of stages before, but this is about the fanciest stage I've ever been on before. And so I don't know how many of you saw it, but it actually goes into the floor and then raises up. So not bad. I wish all stages were like that. Anyway, I'm really honored to be here today. Hope you're enjoying the conference. And I should begin by saying Happy National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I couldn't think of a better way to spend it with with people that like me who care passionately about cyber, and I'm glad you're here and taking part in this conference this morning. I just want to thank Michael for the introduction and for all the work that you're doing with the Cyber Threat Alliance. I have to say that we've known each other now for several years, and during your time at the White House and interaction together, you have always been incredibly an accessible partner and effective partner on cybersecurity issues. Again, particularly as your time during the President Obama's administration as the cyber czar. And I know all of us in the room are really deeply grateful for your leadership and service in that role. And I got an upfront look at how well you moved the ball forward in making our nation safer in cyberspace. So I thank you for your work, Michael. I also want to thank Ari and Venerable for hosting us here today, and also thank the Coalition for Cybersecurity Policy and Law for its contributions to the policy dialogue that we're looking at. And I have to say, I had a chance to look over the agenda on the way here, and I have to say I saw a lot of familiar names and also a really fascinating list of topics that are going to be covered throughout the day. So I'm jealous. One of the curses of being a member of Congress that you really never have never able to devote the bandwidth that you want to any particular topic that really interests you. And so as I said, I'm jealous, and I really wish I could stay with you for the rest of the day. But I know you're in for a great lineup of speakers and discussions today. So last week I had the pleasure of the good fortune of spending last week back home in Rhode Island. When our district work period, we usually have 1 week a month where we're home, back in our home state. And I basically got the opportunity to conduct a cybersecurity tour of the state to raise awareness during National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, learn about the great activities that were going on there, as well as talking to students. Always important part of anything that I'm doing. And I also had the opportunity to convene my first ever meeting of my Cybersecurity Advisory Committee. I've got a group of 9 advisory committees on different important topics, whether it's the economy or veterans and military affairs. But this is my newest one, and it's important because there are a lot of movers and shakers in Rhode Island who are focused on this issue. We've done a number of things, including creating a cybersecurity task force made up of both private industry and government and academia. And so I always want to be on the forefront of understanding what we're doing back home, and then also being able to share what's going on in D.C. with people back in my home state. But getting that local perspective is really important. Anyway, I just want to move on and just say that it might seem like small potatoes when I talk about that, or a shameless promotion of Rhode Island, but for the cynics out there. But I also I do think there's something to be said for the normalization of cybersecurity as a topic of political discourse. And so I have to say that, a decade ago, when if I had been so bold to try to hold a cybersecurity week, I have to say that unfortunately I doubt anyone really would have cared or shown up. So small potatoes, I guess, yes. But I have to say it's also progress when I see groups coming together like this, or that I was able to convene back home in Rhode Island, where people actually care about this topic and understand the challenges that we face in this space. So again, when Mike McCall and I co-founded the Congressional Cybersecurity Caucus, again, nearly a decade ago, we definitely got a lot of strange looks from our colleagues, and people probably thought, and especially back home, people thinking probably being a bit alarmist. But I have to say, today, virtually every member of Congress really does have at least some rudimentary familiarity with the threats that we face in cyberspace, and most of them, I have to say, have a desire to learn more, and it definitely has their attention, particularly unfortunately, when these high-profile breaches actually occur. So, bearing that in mind, what I thought I'd talk about today is life after information sharing, and we did discussion that way. Now, I guess that might seem a bit ironic given the fact that Cyber Threat Alliance is hosting this event, and I'm in no way want to diminish the excellent work that they're doing. And it may seem strange to talk about life after information sharing, given that the single most important piece of cybersecurity legislation that Congress has passed in the last 15 years, the Cybersecurity Act of 2015, is mostly devoted to information sharing. But having spent countless hours over many years working with partners like Representative Mike Rogers or Dutch Ruppersberger and Mike McCall to get the bill across the finish line, I have to say I'm intimately familiar with the legal hurdles that existed, the effective barriers that prevented the free flow of threat indicators, and a number of other challenges. But right now, those barriers are gone, and that's a good thing. There are ironclad authorizations for companies to share indicators within industry and back and forth with the federal government. There are liability protections to ensure that these actions do not inadvertently put companies at risk. There are even protections on the data themselves to ensure that they're not used for any regulatory action by the government. So a number of good things there. And one of the things that Michael emphasized upon leaving the White House was that the Obama administration had put together a lot of good policy on cybersecurity, and I certainly agree. And I think information sharing pretty clearly, definitely, I would say, falls in that bucket. We couldn't have done it without the president's support and Michael's hard work as well. So the law is in place, the policy is in place, and now we just have to deal with the little problem of implementation and bringing the benefits of these new legal paradigms to the operators on the front lines. Of course, easier said than done, right? I think you would agree with that. And that's why I think that the first element of life after information sharing, for Congress at least, now is oversight of how well the Cybersecurity Act is working. So, okay, I realize that maybe that's a bit of a cop-out, but only in Washington could the first element of life after information sharing be information sharing. So, but since it is Washington, and I know there are some wonks sprinkled among the geeks here in the audience today, I just think it's very important for everyone to realize how different a paradigm this will be on the Hill right now. So 2 years ago, many of my meetings began with questions about what the law should look like. Last year, it was how the policies from DHS and DOJ should function. And I'd say today, however, what I want to know is things like, how's it working? How's it all coming together? Is it, did we get it right? Is it working the way we intended? Did we get it wrong? What activities did we enable that didn't exist before? Those are the types of questions that are on my mind. And I have to ask these, as do others, because I do believe that Congress has a vital role to play in pushing the administration on this point. So I want to know, for example, why DHS, though, is still at this point barely into triple digits on private sector participants in the automated indicator sharing program. I think that's a troubling issue that we have to resolve and we have to deal with. I want to know why novel, formerly classified indicators were buried in the Joint Analysis Report on Russian election interference instead of being promoted widely. I think that's a legitimate question that we need to ask. But I also want to hear from industry too, because industry clearly has an important role to play here. After all, how can companies knock AIS when so few have actually tried the feed? So we're looking at all of these things. These are the kinds of questions that I want answered, and the handful of my colleagues that are super focused on this do as well. And the kind of questions that, again, I think Congress is uniquely poised to ask at this point, and we will, and we're doing that. But I think that the second element of life after information sharing is, well, perhaps less surprisingly, moving the conversation off of information sharing. So to too many of my colleagues in Congress, cybersecurity and information sharing are, you could say, synonymous. And I said repeatedly during the entire run-up to the information sharing legislation that information sharing is not a silver bullet, because there is no such thing in cybersecurity. I think you all recognize that. After all, and I've often said that cybersecurity is not a problem that we're all ever going to solve, per se. What I believe it is, it's a risk to be managed. So, so really I'd say let's conduct the rigorous oversight of the Cybersecurity Act, absolutely, but also let's move on to new legislative territory. So, for example, let's tackle some of the low-hanging fruit, like incentives for companies to take care of the sensitive data that they collect about consumers. So on that point, I've reintroduced the Personal Data Notification and Protection Act, a bill that I worked on with Michael and his staff in the last Congress in 2015 with the support of the Obama administration and consultation, again, with Michael and others. It's a breach notification bill, sure, but I prefer it also to think of it as a breach notification exemption bill as well. After all, while consumers absolutely have the right to know if, in fact, there is sensitive or personal data has been compromised, I think that everyone can agree that the best case scenario is that companies be resilient in the face of breaches, because they're going to happen. So resiliency is an important part of this. So my bill in this case outlines a federal process, uniform federal process for notification, streamlining the process for businesses and consumers, have the FTC in charge as the coordinating agency to coordinate a breach if one were to occur. But it's something that I think that's really long been needed. But more importantly, it provides a clear safe harbor for companies that take measures such as at-rest encryption to ensure that the data are meaningless even if they are exfiltrated. So the principles in this bill, I think, have been needed for years, and we need to only look at the latest mega breach Equifax clearly to understand why. So in this case, I really hope that my colleagues are going to act swiftly in the wake of this breach to take up the bill and finally pick what I see right now at present as the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. But life after information sharing can't simply be about old ideas that Congress hasn't had the chance to pick up yet. So I believe it means rising to meet the new threats, like the unprecedented information operation that targeted the very pillar of our democracy, our elections. That should be a wake-up call to everyone, quite frankly. I don't think it's got enough urgency that it needs on the maybe among the general public and sometimes on the Hill as well. But let me say this: the Russian campaign intended to undermine the faith in the processes that are fundamental to our national identity, exposed how vulnerable we are, surprisingly, to manipulation, both through false narratives propagated through social media, but also due to a lack of emphasis on election cybersecurity. This is something that certainly gets my attention for a number of things, not only as someone who spends a lot of time on cyber, but also as a former Secretary of State in Rhode Island. So to address this challenge, I teamed up with Representative Mark Meadows, who, as many of you may know, was one of the most conservative members of Congress that there is. We introduced the PAPER Act together. So let it never be said that bipartisanship is dead on the Hill. You just have to work harder to find it these days, but bipartisanship is possible. So this bill will basically enable the Election Assistance Commission, or the EAC, to work with stakeholders in government and the private sector to develop appropriate cybersecurity guidance for election officials, which is important. It will also empower DHS to assist election officials in conducting cybersecurity risk assessments, which are happening but need to happen more robustly, I believe. Importantly, the bill provides federal resources directly to state and local governments to implement recommendations based on their own cybersecurity risk profile. So maintaining state and local control over elections, I want to emphasize this point, maintaining state and local control over elections is a fundamental principle that we absolutely must preserve in any legislation that comes out of Congress. Again, I'd say this from the perspective as a former Secretary of State, and I'm sure I reflect the views of local election officials and other state election officials. We don't want it to be a peer, or we don't want the federal government coming in and trying to run local elections. That's not going to sit well with anyone. It's not going to work, and I don't think anyone's even suggesting that. But it's also unwise to think that the town or even state governments are going to be able to repel cyber intrusions from a nation state like Russia without federal assistance. So there are resources, federal resources, that can be brought to bear when asked or when needed, and we've got to do a better job of reaching out to state and local election officials now to make sure that they know that those resources are available and that we can bring them to bear when needed. So with that, let me just start by wrapping up. I can see that Michael wants the stage back, I'm sure, and I know you guys just had your first break, but you've got a whole lineup of speakers and panels coming up. So I want to let you get off to that, but I think just in wrapping up, I think it's just one more element of life after information sharing that we have to keep in mind, and that is that Congress is traditionally pretty good about helping out with what my good friend General Alexander likes to call cleanup on aisle 9, but we have a responsibility to the American people to look beyond the incidents of last month and last year and to what can happen down the road. So in the United States, we escaped much lasting damage from the WannaCry virus. We came out of NotPetya without too much damage, and I have to commend Representative Walden on the Energy and Commerce Committee for pushing to investigate these issues. However, we've not yet really seen a damaging attack focused on integrity as opposed to confidentiality or availability. But I can say this: I predict that we will. And that's something that we need to be focused on. We need to continue really to walk I'd say we continue at this point to walk the knife's edge with the internetization of our world as more safety critical applications and devices are connected. We, however, cannot keep the balance up forever. Addressing the next generation of cybersecurity risks and vulnerabilities certainly will not be easy. It's going to require embracing the security researchers, so often dismissed as hackers, that truly want to make the internet a safer place. I was just out at DEF CON a couple months back, and I was impressed with how the researcher community wants to be a part of solving problems, and they're passionate about it. It's going to require ensuring societal support for the security of our collective internet infrastructure, including widely used open source software libraries. It's going to require coming to terms with the difficulties that we have measuring cybersecurity risk and development metrics that and developing metrics that, while allowing for complexity, allow us to prioritize cybersecurity investments as well. So these are not trivial problems. They're not necessarily easy, but I think they're made course, the much more massive by a United States Congress that it has over right now 80 committees and subcommittees with some level of jurisdiction over cyber. If there's one thing that could change on the Hill, that would be it, and bringing the number of committees and subcommittees down to something that is much more manageable and would allow for efficiencies. If people wondered why it took so long to get the information sharing bill through the Congress, that's a big part of the problem right there. But anyway, let me just say that in closing, all these challenges are not insurmountable. We're making progress, and this is the inaugural CyberNext DC, and I have to say I can't wait to be back again next year to talk about progress then. So with that, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you, and I'll turn it back over to Michael. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Arnold Abraham with the Cyber Law Group and former senior staff at Cyber Command. I found it very interesting you said about state and local governments shouldn't be expected to have the capacity to defend against foreign nation states. But it seems like we're expecting private corporations to be able to defend themselves against foreign nation states. Do you see more of a government role in defending against foreign intelligence and military cyber attacks, or should we continue to rely on companies to essentially protect themselves as if during World War II we told factories, put your own anti-aircraft on your roof, you're responsible for defending yourself?
Yeah, a very good question, something that I grapple with all the time, and many of us do, whether it's whether on the time when I was on HIPSI or still on armed services, or the work I do on homeland security. You know, what is that balance? We are making progress, I guess you'd say, toward answering some of those questions. But let's face it. In order to do what would be necessary, I don't think the American people would put up with, or would support. I mean, having NSA sitting on our networks, for example, in the .com world is not, it's probably a non-starter for many. So, what is that balance? And I think we have we've answered a lot of those questions, at least internally and within the government. I know that's something the Obama administration had worked on significantly, but it's going to continue to be a work in progress. I mean, you're right. I mean, companies shouldn't have to get their own anti-aircraft, but we did allow. That's something we did enable and encourage in the information sharing legislation, that companies can set up their own cyber defenses. What we have to be careful of course, and Michael and I were just talking about this briefly, is that those defenses do not mean in any way, shape, or form hacking back. And I know it's all too tempting, and it's. There are entities now, whether individuals or, say, companies, that do have impressive capabilities and talent within their organization. I'm sure that they could inflict some measure of harm or cost on who they believe to be an enemy. The problem is, as we can all appreciate, that whoever it is on the receiving end of that hackback may not make that distinction between, is this coming from U.S. Cyber Command? Is it coming from private industry? Is it coming from an individual? They're probably going to think it's just lump it all together, and then they could potentially take action and set off a cascade of events that be difficult to control. So we have to. That's something that we need to continue to have dialogue on and work on together. I don't say that we have any easy answers right now, but we have to do a better job of understanding what that line is and when we respond as a country when companies are being attacked. So.
All right, we have time for maybe one more question. All right. Well, thank you very much, Congressman. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.